So, hello, Fiona, and welcome to the UK. I feel like I have to say, even though you are in Australia at the moment.
I am.
So, can you tell me a bit about Freshfield Grove?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I'm British, as you can tell from my accent, but I now live in Australia and in Tasmania, to be more precise. And my husband and I bought an olive grove here about 3 years ago, and we named it Freshfield Grove. And so we've sort of been having adventures on our little farm down here. We've got about 1,000 olive trees on the property, so olive oil will be our main product. But there's quite a lot of other land as well. We've got about 50 acres in total, and the olives are on about 5. So we've had some barley crops on the rest of the property over the last few years. We're also establishing a little fruit orchard and a vegetable garden. So yeah, there's plenty to keep us busy here.
Yeah. So, what made you decide to buy it?
I've been kind of thinking about this in the last few days since we set up this meeting, because I guess it's been quite a long journey, and looking back, it's kind of hard to know sort of exactly which decisions at which points led us here. I guess just to sort of give you a bit of a timeline for context. So we bought it 3 years ago, but we'd been looking at properties in Australia for quite a long time prior to that. My husband's Australian, and we met and got married in the UK. And when we came over to Australia for holidays and to visit his family, we were always looking at properties here. And so we saw a few over the sort of the few years and few times that we visited, and so I've kind of lost the thread of where I was going with this.
It's about the journey of making the decision.
Yeah, so we saw a few properties, made offers on one or two, sort of did a bit of research on some others, and during this time we were kind of deciding that olives were a good crop in Tasmania. I mean, Australia in general, but in Tasmania in particular, the climate's quite cool here and it's quite good for them. So I guess we decided that we wanted to move to Australia, and we decided that we wanted an acreage property, and we decided that we wanted olives, and then it took us a while to find this particular property. And during all of that, my husband was offered a job in Sydney, so we relocated from the UK. And it was after that we bought this place. But I guess the sort of decisions that went into it prior to that were things like, if I hadn't met my husband, I probably wouldn't have come to Australia, or almost certainly wouldn't have ended up in Tasmania. So I think the people you meet along your journey are really important, and obviously some relationships are more pivotal than others. I think I really enjoy being outside and working outside, which is something I didn't appreciate when I was younger and sort of thinking about careers. So it sort of suits me quite well from that point of view. My husband's much more of a risk taker than I am, so doing something that kind of seems a bit crazy from the outside, well, and probably from the inside a bit as well, kind of comes more naturally to him. And I think we kind of make a really good team. We're kind of opposites in personality, but we sort of egg each other on, I guess, and support each other in what we're doing.
So how did you feel when you'd made that decision, when you'd, I don't know, signed the contract, paid the deposit, whatever it is you do when you buy an olive grove in Tasmania?
All of the above. Kind of, it felt a bit surreal, I suppose. And we had quite a long settlement period, so we signed the contract, and then it was 3 months before we got the property. And there'd been a lot of sort of toing and froing in the negotiations and things, and then even once we'd signed the contract, we had to get our finance approved. So it felt like it sort of dragged on, and it's like, at what point can we actually say it's ours? So I think the day we kind of went and picked up the keys and then drove here, and it's like, oh my God, we've really done it. And, you know, sort of walking around outside, and 50 acres is, so our block's kind of squarish in shape, and each boundary is about 400 meters long. So it's big, but it's not like so big you can't see the edges of it. But it still feels pretty large when you're sort of walking around it, and especially coming from the UK, where most people don't live on big rural properties. You know, we're sort of used to living in a relatively suburban setting, most of us. So yeah, it was a pretty cool moment when we got here.
I can kind of feel excitement from you retelling that story. And like, yeah, I think it's like whenever you buy a house and you get the keys and you walk in, and it's like, what now?
Yeah, definitely.
So did it feel like a big decision? And making that decision, and you've talked about teamwork and how your husband is a bit happier to take risks, but has it changed your attitude to doing other things in life, or becoming happier with risk yourself?
Yes, I think it's been quite a gradual process, because over the last few years we've still actually been living in Sydney but trying to manage this place remotely. So a big change for me in the next we're only about 6 weeks away now. I'm actually going to be here full time, which kind of feels like the end of a stage and the beginning of something else new and exciting. But I think, the whole process of looking at running my own business and everything that goes along with that has led to quite an interesting journey, I suppose, in terms of thinking about what things I like doing and what things I'm good at. And it's a world away from being in a job where somebody essentially tells you what to do and to some extent how to do it. So it's very liberating being able to make those decisions myself. It's a bit scary as well, and sometimes it feels as if there's so much to think about. It's kind of almost paralyzing. But I'm trying to get a bit better about kind of having a master list of things that need doing, and then just pulling things off it in a more controlled fashion, because otherwise I'm just like, oh my God, I've got all these things to do. I need to do my accounts, and I need to prune the trees, and I need to do that social media post, and I need to go and buy this equipment, and I need to hire some staff to help me pick, and where do I start? But it's really exciting. Basically getting to pick how I want to develop things. And
I think there's probably a massive learning curve, but in a really positive way, because I don't know if there's a manual for growing olive trees and managing an olive grove and deciding what to do with the rest of your land, or is it something you're finding out bit by bit as you need to?
There are books written and manuals on olive growing, but something that I've found quite difficult is that there's a lot of variation in what people tell you to do. So if you asked 10 olive growers in 10 different Italian villages, they'd all tell you to prune the trees a different way. So it's quite hard to sort of filter through the research that's available and then try and work out what to do. So a lot of the customs that have grown up, it's because that's what works for that particular village, given how many trees they've got and what workforce they've got available at whatever time of year and what the weather's like. And all that sort of stuff. So I'm trying to look at it as there's no definite right and wrong. There seems to be quite a lot of leeway to find the way that works best for you. But I mean, having said that, we do need to bring a bit more structure into things like the grass control in the grove. We hadn't really got on top of the mowing this year. I really need to get on top of the pruning because the canopies are too dense, and that leaves you with sort of risk of pests and diseases. We bought a load of fertiliser and then realised we didn't have the right equipment to spread it, and then we didn't have anywhere to store it, so it kind of got wet, and now it's even more difficult to spread. So there's all that sort of stuff that we're trying to figure out as we go. But the olive grower industry in Australia is really inclusive and very friendly and very helpful. So there's an annual conference every year, which I've been to, and it's really awesome to get to speak to people that have been growing, some for only a couple of years like us, some have been in the industry for kind of 20 years. And, we've got 1,000 trees. The biggest grove in Australia, I think, has got 3.2 million or something. But yeah, people from all these different groves are there and are sort of happy to chat and exchange information. And then there's a Tasmanian branch of the Olive Association as well, and they have quarterly meetings. And again, I rang somebody the other day to say, oh, we need a new olive oil tank, and you mentioned at the meeting that you'd got one, where did you get it from? And this guy was so helpful and sort of, oh, well, we ended up getting it from here, but something that we did for a few years was use this instead, and that's cheaper. And so it's been really nice to feel that I can ask questions of people.
Yeah, and I think there is something about like-minded people. So when you're all doing what you want to do, and there's probably quite a big passion for it as well, if that's what you've chosen to do.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you find you learn from nature? I'm sort of thinking, so I have recently planted my little seedlings for my small vegetable patch, and I go out and check on them every morning and just see what's happening to them. And I remember one year I planted them, they were probably a bit small, but they were in there, and then a couple of days later they'd all been ripped up by the birds, which could have been my chickens, or it could have been the little nice Tweety birds that I encourage, or whoever knows. And I was really angry, and then I thought, but this is just nature doing its thing, and it sort of puts me in my place in a way and grounds me, and you go, well, you can't worry about it, this is what it is, how do you deal with it?
Yeah, I definitely want to adopt a practice of sort of being observant and working with nature rather than trying to suppress it. So one of the things we've been struggling with is the grass that grows along where the irrigation lines run, because we can't mow those areas because it would chop up the irrigation lines. So sort of industry standard practice is to spray with glyphosate. Mm-hmm. And I know that like all the documentation says, oh, it kills the grass and then just washes away and nothing bad happens. But you sort of think, really? Yeah. And so I've been trying to learn a bit more about soil health in general. But we do want to encourage more biodiversity in our grove, and I think soil health is an important part of that. And there are so many little insects around when I'm sort of working in the grove. At the moment there's tons of little grasshoppers. Well, some of them are tiny, some of them are like that big, but then you'll get one that's kind of that size, and they're so noisy. You sort of think about the silence of nature, and it's not at all. It's really rowdy. Loads of little spiders, sort of lots of little green ones, which are quite cute, sort of really fluorescent green. Quite a lot of snails around, which they're probably less of a good thing maybe, although I mean the birds probably eat them, and we've been lucky so far that we haven't had birds as a pest with the trees. I don't think it's much of a problem in Europe, but in Australia the native birds are a bit more go-getting, I think. And I know some people have had their crops decimated by either, well, mostly starlings, I think, but sometimes the white cockatoos, and they can kind of, if they get a taste for it, they can clear you out in a matter of hours to days, I believe. So
yeah,
we're hoping they don't get a taste for ours.
I hope not. So do you have any tips? Would you offer any tips if there's anyone in a similar position to you 2 or 3 years ago who's thinking, or maybe now just getting the idea of, I would love to work on the land, I would love to have my own piece of nature to grow things and live?
I think you need to consider really carefully whether you want to do it as a hobby or as a job. The more I find out about agriculture and the returns in it, the more I wonder, how anybody makes a decent living off agriculture alone on a small scale, certainly. And it also makes me wonder how pretty much anything we eat can be produced for the price that we pay for it. Because I think, yeah, most of us are kind of, we're very cost conscious when we're shopping. But then when you sort of start to think about, you know, the ridiculously low price of stuff, like I know a few years ago in the UK, you could buy 2 chickens for £5. And it's like, really? You sort of, you know, you think about the infrastructure that's needed to produce them, and the workforce and all the sort of health and safety stuff, and then all the packaging and the marketing and the shipping and storage. It's just like, yeah, how can we buy anything at that price? So kind of looking at it now from the other side, I'm obviously trying to work out sort of what my costs are, and trying to work out how I can charge enough for the olive oil that it will actually be profitable. I'm looking at other sort of services that I can offer as well to kind of value add, both in terms of physical products, which was why I started making olive leaf tea, and now I've got some really nice olive wood spoons as well. But I'm also keen to start offering tours of the Grove, and there's some vineyards around us that are doing sort of little wine experiences, or sort of be a vina on for a day experiences, and it'd be really nice to kind of offer that sort of thing as well. So to go back to your initial question, I think if it's hard to make a good living from it just being a sort of romantic notion of wandering around on a farm. Yeah. There's a lot of physical work, and then there's all the other stuff that goes along with running a small business as well. But having said that, if it's something that you really want to do, and especially if you find a property that really appeals to you and an industry that I think really speaks to you, then yeah, go for it. Find out as much as you can beforehand, and I guess don't overstretch yourself financially in terms of buying something in the first place. But I think it's something that's got a lot of potential.
Yeah, and I think with anything, lots of people I've talked to, there's in most cases a kind of transition period where you try things out, and yes, life is a bit crazy because you're doing 17 different things at once, but it does help you focus on whether it's something you really want to do and whether it's something you can do, and then the final step to making it your life is not such a big one.
Yeah, I think if you can do it as a transitional thing, that's definitely a bonus. Although I suppose part of the reason why we've decided to go for it full time is kind of we want to know whether we can really make it work or not. And although it's not producing, well, we're spending far more on it at the moment than we're making. But yeah, we felt that we wanted to commit to it fully, and yeah, we'll do everything we can over the next 12 months to try and turn things around.
Brilliant. I think that's my final question is always what's coming up next, and we've talked quite a lot about that, about the different products. You've got your tea and you've got your spoons, and obviously you're going full time on it, so I'm sure there will be lots to hear about and lots of adventures to hear about. So best of luck with it all.
Thank you very much, Tanya.
Thank you for your time.
Been lovely to talk to you.
Speak to you soon.
Yeah, bye.